how could I think of selling it without knowing, who I'm selling it to? And so I need to get to the bottom of this. I'd like to talk to the CEO of the company. I'd like to hear more about what you're planning on doing with it. And I'd like to hear. And so he said, okay, hold please. And then, a couple minutes later on the phone, in a very thick New York accent comes the kind of the tough guy CEO. And he says, well, listen, young lady, we really, really need to get this domain. What can we... What are you going to give us for this domain? And I said, well, no, you don't understand. And this is where I think I kind of, I put my vision out there. It wasn't necessarily reality. And I said, well, I've got an idea and I can't let it go. This is my vision. I know exactly what I want. I have a whole business plan around it and I know exactly what I'm going to be doing. And then he said, well, what is the bottom line? What will you take? Like, what's the number that you need? And I don't know if any of you listeners out there, hopefully you've seen Austin Powers, the movie, but the first thing that popped into my head was, well, I couldn't take it anything less than $1 million.
Welcome to the Habits to Goals podcast with Martin Grunberg. It's time to take control of your life. Are you ready to achieve goals faster and more consistently than ever before? You need the Habit Factor. You're listening to Habits to Goals, the podcast that helps you create the habits that lead to success. And here is Martin Grunberg.
All right, before we jump into this episode, I'd like to encourage you, make sure you go ahead and subscribe to the Habits to Goals podcast. Do us, Henry and I, a huge favor, if you could please, leave a review. And finally, if you're new to the program, you're looking for a quick resource and a great tool, just text us at 33444. Again, that's 33444, and simply text 4 goals. That's the number 4, GOALS. So that's 4 goals to 33444. You'll be dialed in. You'll get the template right away. Now let's bring it back to this episode. All righty, here we go. Welcome back. Thank you for joining me. My name is Martin Grunberg, and of course you have reached Habits to Goals. Today's guest is not only a dear friend, she is an inspiration for truly all entrepreneurs. And we're going to get into what that all means and what she's doing. Sarah Hardwick, thank you so much for joining me today. How are you doing?
Thank you. Thank you. I'm doing wonderful. I'm enjoying our weather and planning on taking a beach walk right after this. So I'm doing fabulous.
That is fabulous. So yeah, before we get into it too much, I think I've briefed you in some form or fashion. You can either kick it off with your GTR or you can defer that and have me give it a go.
Sure. I would be happy to. One thing that I am really excited about, and actually you were able to help out with personally, is one thing that I believe in, and one of my personal values is really giving back and helping out those who are less fortunate in times of need.
Oh my goodness.
And so I was able to help out. You heard about the recent flooding crisis really devastated the country of Peru, and specifically a community that you and I visited. And so I was able to work with one of our clients to donate 3,000 servings of Reimmune, which is actually a clinical strength hydration product. So we were able to get 3,000 servings, and then with the help of friends and family, get that up to 5,000. So we're actually going to be sending 5,000 doses of this, basically this supplement that's really going to help aid some of the really sick people that are there. So I'm really excited about that. It really makes me feel great being able to do something that's meaningful and giving back. And I'm grateful for corporations that are committed to that, and then also friends and family who are willing to chip in. And I think it's going to make a big impact. So I'm really excited about that.
Props to you, first of all, for chairing and leading that effort, organizing that. It was easy to support that, Sarah. I think that was so thoughtful and kind. I did not know strangely enough. And I had a buddy actually in Peru trying to do the same hike we had done toward Machu Picchu, which I will never forget. And it was tragic just to see the images. So I cannot imagine what those people have gone through. So thank you for leading that and sharing that.
Sure.
Mine will be less heavy. It was just kind of random. You know, on Twitter, you get notifications of people, you know, will retweet your stuff, your tweets. So I just happened to see this, and it's happened a few times, and I hope this wonderful lady is listening. Her name is Deborah Moore, but it turns out she's in charge of the Carolinas healthcare system or something incredible like that. So, Deborah, if you're listening, thank you so much for doing that. She has, retweeted a few different blog posts, and, you know, Sarah, obviously the healthcare industry and the habit factor fit very nicely together. So anyways, I think that's my GTR.
Yep, that's exciting.
It's pretty cool.
Yeah.
It's like chief of staff of the Carolinas healthcare system. Very impressive title, Deborah.
Wow.
So we got that out of the way. Let's rewind and go back to kind of where you grew up. Where'd you go to high school, if you don't mind sharing that?
I grew up in Colorado, and I went to school at Durango High School, which is down in Southwest Colorado, in the Four Corners area. Pretty small community, but a beautiful, beautiful place to live. We have a, ski hill and river rafting, and my dad's a forest ranger for 30 years. So I've always had the benefit of living in really very beautiful places. I think it's really kind of made me who I am. So I grew up in Durango.
It sounds gorgeous. Like I want to go find Durango.
Yeah, you should. It's a perfect place to take a vacation.
What is the population?
I believe, there's a college. It's Port Louis College is there also. And so I think if you add in the college, it's probably close to maybe 20,000, probably 15, 20,000 people. So small.
Pretty small. And that's with a college.
Yeah.
That's incredible. So then I'm sure you're an all-star student, being the go-getter that you are / were. And then you end up where in college?
At the University of Denver. So you're right. I was fortunate to get a scholarship, and I actually chose between two different majors. One, I had been as a hobby all through high school, been in a lot of plays and theater. And so I had one path I could have taken was a full ride theater scholarship to go and work in performing arts and, be an actress and do that whole path. And then the other option was to study marketing and business. And so I ended up being, I guess, making the more practical decision and studying marketing and business. And I still have a flair for the dramatic, as you probably know, Martin.
I don't think I knew some of that, and it all fits so perfect. And in my mind, anyways, you've totally integrated that flair and that theater aspect of your character into your amazing company. So we'll end up getting to that too. So you get a scholarship. You study business, and then what's your kind of first foray into the professional world? What does that look like?
Yeah, well, I actually had internships all through college. And so my first kind of foray was doing marketing and public relations for a nonprofit affordable housing company. So that was, I think, really gave me a taste of, as you can tell from my first story about, the good things that are happening, the importance of giving back and how good it feels to be able to get involved and to actually do marketing for organizations that are making the world a better place. So I had the opportunity to do that for, I think, 2 years during college. And then from there, I actually went during my senior year, flew out to San Diego for spring break and drove straight to Mission Beach, got out of the car, walked on the boardwalk, and immediately decided that even though I did not know a soul in San Diego, that was exactly where I was going to come back after I graduated. So I ended up spending spring break and then going back to college. And, for the last couple of months of college, I didn't apply to any jobs or anything, any opportunities in Colorado. And instead put all of my attention and focus on trying to get a job in San Diego, and was able to get, flown out to do an interview. And while I was here, I said, well, whether I get the job or not, I'm going to be here. So I'm finding an apartment. So I ended up driving out in a U-Haul with my younger brother and not knowing anyone, and getting a job working for a technology marketing firm for a couple of years.
And that went for a couple of years. And
that went actually till about 9/11, when the bottom dropped out of the technology industry, and the company went from about 100 people down to where I was one of 4 people left at the agency. That was an interesting experience over,
Wow. Well, at least you made the cut there for a long time.
Yes. As you can imagine, the morale was pretty low, and, everyone's looking over their shoulder going, oh, who's next? And, the positive side of that, I think, was that with so few people, I went from being the kind of a lower level coordinator, just starting off, to I pretty much did everything. And so it gave me a lot of experience in being able to do much, much more senior level work and do really significant things that probably would have taken me a lot longer to be able to have the chance to do.
Wow.
So that was really fortunate.
Yeah, that's an interesting insight. So as the ship is sinking, you have to wear more and more hats. So you're gaining all this fantastic experience, even in a significant down cycle, if you will. So then you decide, it sounds like, and if I'm wrong, please correct me, but you decide to venture out on your own at that point?
Yeah, exactly. I mean, I still had a full-time job, actually, and I was 25 at that point, and I just looked around and went, I think I could do this, and if it isn't this, I don't know. I don't know exactly what I'm going to do. And so I took a leap of faith, and I left, and I just started taking on small projects and freelance work. And I thought, well, I'll just do this until I figure out my real job. And maybe I'm going to go to LA and do PR for the movies, or maybe I'm going to do this or that. And I had all these ideas of what I thought I wanted to do. And, but then one thing leads to another. And before you know it, then I took on another project, and then I got another one. And then at this time, I'm working out of my home office in my little apartment on the beach, in Ocean Beach. And then then it's like, well, this is getting awkward. I have interns and people coming here, and maybe I ought to get an office. And so one thing led to another. And so without having a business plan, or without having really a vision of where, of being an entrepreneur, even really necessarily, I didn't leave thinking I was going to be an entrepreneur at all. It was kind of, more, well, until I figure it out. But then what ended up was the creation of my company, Zenzi. And, since then, almost 15 years now span of, growth and lessons and expanding and learning. And it's been quite a ride since then.
So, yeah, that's a mouthful. So we're 15 years in to Zenzi Communications. And I mean, what a great company this is. And you've it was a couple years ago where you really, my feeling was this was always an underpinning theme for the company, but the discovery and the shift to truly being values-based marketing, can you share kind of how that was birthed, if you will, and
Sure.
and what the drivers were and the opportunity there?
Sure, absolutely. Yeah. So for the first 10 years of being at Zenzi, we had the opportunity to work with a lot of big clients like Nestle and Ghirardelli Chocolate and Chiquita Banana. And what we found was a lot of times these companies had huge amounts of research and these deep insights about their customers that went beyond just demographics. And so it really delved into kind of the psychographics and what moves their hearts and their minds and got really deep. And what we found in looking back was that all of the campaigns that we had that really were huge successes, that went viral, that drove sales, that were really, really huge for the company, they all had an element of tapping into the values of the customers and figuring out a way to align the values of the company with the values of the customers and speak to people in a really compelling way. And so after having that realization, I said, well, that sounds great. Well, there's got to be a tool or some sort that I can just purchase or a platform I can use to uncover values of customers. And then I want to use that, for all of my clients, because not every client, a lot of them were more smaller and medium-sized companies, and they don't have these huge research budgets and they don't have access to these type of insights. So there must be a better way. And what I discovered then in that search was that there actually wasn't anything out there. And what was interesting was that there's been for decades and literally, 40 years of psychology research and these academics studying values and really proving how values drive consumer behavior and drive purchase behavior. But there's no connection from this psychology research to practically applying it to a marketing campaign.
That's incredible.
Which was strange, and so, so it was really out of frustration that I said, well, boy, if no one else is doing it, I need to build some tools and I need to change the direction. And I made it my mission to be the world's first values marketing agency. So that was how that was born.
With specific tools to help your clients uncover / discover these things within their client base to make your campaigns more effective.
Exactly.
And what I love about this, just coming from the habit factor angle, or even the habits to goals angle, which is one and the same. There's a great quote. I've shared this with you. I can't remember who it's attributed to, but it simply says, if you change your values, you change your behavior. And it's kind of, that's how significant values are as a driver for our behaviors, for our choices, for our decisions. When people value something, it guides all of the above. And for you to tap in and be the first to say, well, marketing's coming at this in general from maybe the wrong angle, perhaps the wrong angle. Here's a better way. I love the innovative insight there. That's fantastic.
Yeah, thanks. Yeah, and a lot of times for many marketers or, even business owners, it's something that you've done instinctively. And so when you come up with a campaign or you think about what do my customers like, it's, a lot of times you're coming up with creative ideas and thinking about, well, I think they're going to like this. And instinctively you kind of go, into that emotional place, but there's never been a way to validate that or to, use data to point you in the right direction. And so that's what we're really trying to do, is kind of take what you've done instinctively and either say yes or no, and then here are some tools to get, to be more effective at that, the communications
that's
side
really
of it.
Cool. And is there any particular case study without, I don't know what you can or can't divulge, but anything you're able to share?
Well, yeah. What we've been working in a lot of different industries, and I think what we've found is that a lot of the industries where values really is a very important factor are industries where we're talking about purchases that say something about who you are. So we've seen a lot of traction working with home builders. So as you can imagine, when you think about buying a home, it's such a personal
right.
Statement of who you are. So do you want to live in a very rural area with good schools and churches and, a lot of, more of a conservative type of a feel? Or do you want to be in the middle of the city with bars and restaurants and nightlife and diversity? And so where you choose to live is a huge statement about your values. And so by marketing homes based on values, we can be a lot more effective than I think what a lot of builders or, a lot of companies in general are doing, is just speaking to everyone. And so what we're trying to do is help these builders say, well, who is our best and most ideal client? Well, it's going to be someone who enjoys pleasure and living in the moment and a diversity of experience. And then we can market their homes, in a much more effective way. So we've seen a lot of traction. And once we come up with these insights, then we're doing things like changing website copy or changing ad copy or creating, social media campaigns. And so, we've seen a lot of success in just moving the needle on whatever those important goals are and those benchmarks are. But really, it's just about taking a step back and thinking about why, not what you're selling, but why people are buying, and then changing, your marketing message to really speak to that desire. And that we've seen huge marketing success and tangible results across all areas of marketing by integrating those insights.
That's amazing. And again, I love when you're guiding the client through the values filter. So this is actually a question I ask quite a bit of guests, strangely enough, and I was almost going to let it go, but now I think it's more important that I ask it. In your opinion, why are values so important, whether you define them for your person or your company? Obviously, here you are integrating it into your client solution, but when you think about values, what is the significance?
I mean, they're the who, what, when, where, and why behind every decision that we make. They are the filter. They're the guideposts. And so, when you don't act in a way that's in alignment with your values, there's a dissonance that happens, and that's when you see a lot of dissatisfaction or a lot of unhappiness, or you don't feel like you're in the right job, or you don't feel like you're in the right relationship. And when the times when that dissonance happens is when things are, you're making decisions that are not in alignment with your values, because your values are formed at such an early age. I mean, they're very much in the subconscious level. So when you start to act in ways that are not in alignment with your values, then it's really hard to be happy, and it's really hard to feel fulfilled, and it's really hard to feel that sense of satisfaction. So, I mean, first and foremost, understanding what your values are and knowing, wow, how that impacts your behavior, even just on a personal level, is really, really interesting. And then when you take it to the business level, it's just as important, because I think of it like the 80-20 rule. So if you're a company and you focus on, the 20% of customers that are your best customers, that are most in alignment with your values, those are the customers that are going to be your advocates, and those are going to be your customers who are going to share and be repeat buyers. And so if you can focus on if you know your company values, and then you can speak to people who share those values, it's going to make your job as a business owner or as a marketer so much easier, because that's going to be, the customer that you're going to have to work a lot less hard to be able to attract them and to nurture that customer.
So that is a PhD level, as far as I'm concerned, response. I do want to say I'm picking up some like tapping or some banging on the desk or something. So
are you?
Yeah, and I don't know what that is. It's not the end of the world. I'm just making you aware of it if there's anything going on in the background. So that is a powerful answer, Sarah. And the word dissonance. So again, I've asked this many times, and you came at it from probably 8 different angles, which is absolutely fantastic. But I'm so glad I asked it now, because dissonance equals, as you said, really disharmony, which means you're not happy. And I'm sure you're familiar with this, but this idea of integrity really means, and I learned this from Covey, in many ways it means that you are in alignment with your values. You're acting with integrity toward your values. So the dissonance is when you're broken off of that. So the reason I asked the question for the listener, if they haven't picked it up yet, the reason I keep bringing it up is, and I've shared this and I've written about this, but it's taking the time to identify your personal values is a game changer from my experience. And then the irony of my direct experience is that I never thought about it that way, and I started with my company's values, and then I saw the eventual transformation of the company, and then I said, my God, what am I doing? I need to be doing this for myself. So I thank you for answering that. That was like I said, a PhD level answer. You were very well versed in values, and obviously if you're integrating it into your client solution. So let me jump back, because we've talked a lot of the success of your entrepreneurial adventure, and sometimes, well, a lot of times, I like to make sure people know there are difficult times, big, heavy challenges, things when it seems like there is no tomorrow. So is there any particular instance you can share where things went terribly sideways, and kind of how did you pull yourself out of that? And you don't have to be totally into the details if you want to.
Yeah, no, I think there's been many instances where I have felt like that. And, it's everything from just financial challenges to, staffing challenges. I mean, there are so many times when you just literally will, at the end of the day feel like, I don't even know why I'm doing this. You throw your hands up and go, I don't even think, that's it. I'm selling the company, or I'm done. I've had it. And I think when I look back, a lot of those times are sometimes around decisions where I've made that I haven't trusted my instinct or my intuition. Mm-hmm. And as I look back, I think and that's exactly what you were saying about, acting with integrity and in alignment with your values. But what I have found when I look back are sometimes these situations, and it could be everything from, taking on a client that I didn't have a good feeling about, or I didn't like the way, he or she treated, their team, or it could be taking a new employee on where, I was desperate. A lot of times it happens in these moments of desperation when I think, well, I need the money, or I've got to find someone to fill this position. And when I act out of desperation, but don't feel instinctively that it's the right decision, I think it always, always comes back to get me.
All right, just a quick timeout. Want to make sure you're aware that when you subscribe, that is, you hit the subscribe button, you're going to get 3 episodes automatically delivered to you, and in some cases, wirelessly. So you'll get your Mind Bullet Monday, your interview on Wednesday, and of course, your Frequently Asked Friday, all automatically delivered when you subscribe. And on a related note, just want to make sure you realize it helps Henry and I tremendously, if you're getting value, to leave a quick review, particularly in iTunes. iTunes values reviews. It weighs them very heavily, and that helps the show rankings and how we can spread our message. And one more quick note about our great sponsor, Audible.com. If there's one thing I know, and I think Jim Rohn was the one who said this originally, in 5 years, the difference in your life will be largely based upon 2 things: the books you've read and the relationships you have fostered. Doesn't it make sense to take advantage of the downtime, whether you're on the road, on a run, in the gym, kill a couple birds with one stone, get a book going? It's phenomenal. The more people I turn on to it, the more compliments I get. Not that I've actually done anything. 180,000 titles to choose from. You get 1 free book a month, 30% off any other book. Again, check it out. audibletrial.com/habits to goals. I'm going to say that again real quick. audibletrial.com/habits to goals. And that is the number 2.
And so when I don't listen to it, I always really regret that. And so what I think one of the things that I've learned from that is really about when I get in those desperate situations where I feel like, backed into a corner and like I don't have options, sometimes that's the time when you actually need to say, whoa, I'm just going to wait. And, or maybe go in a different direction than everyone else or do something different. And maybe it means even when you desperately need the money, it might mean turning down a potential client that would help fill that gap. But having the courage to do that is sometimes really, really challenging when you're feeling that, you don't know what's going to happen tomorrow.
That is, that is powerful advice. I reflect often on this one quote, which is muddied waters left to stand become clear. And that idea of what you said, just not doing anything rather than rushing into something that doesn't feel right. That's a great share. Very good advice. So the mindset, because you're an incredible entrepreneur. You're a go-getter. You got high energy. You know where you want to go. When you hit that super gnarly speed bump, for lack of a better word, how are you? What's the mindset to pull to show up for tomorrow?
Well, I mean, a lot of times for me, it involves like getting a change of state. And I think there was a question, or you had sent over some thoughts on like how you get through these tough days. I mean, how do you just really pull yourself together and make it work? And so for me, it's things like just letting myself get out of that battling over the speed bumps. And like, it'll be something like even where I'll go home feeling like that. I'll put the music on as loud as I possibly can. I'll dance around the house, or I'll take a walk around the block, or I'll, just something to give me a change of state. And I find, because I think a lot and I, sometimes can get stressed out, that for me, I really have to get myself out of I'm just going to keep charging through and I know I'll find a solution, and I just have to get completely out of my head and I have to do something different. I love cooking, which sounds silly. Like I love making a complicated recipe where I'm just chop, because it just puts me in a different state, in a different zone. And, it gives me something else to think about. And so, getting to get into a better mindset for me sometimes involves like this change of perspective. And so I'll always try to do something to get through these challenging times that will give me a change of perspective or a change of state, and rather than just trying to force through things. So that does seem to help me.
No, that's beautiful. I love asking that question. A lot of times it sounds very similar, just said differently, and it has to do with walking the dog, going for, a run, but just shutting off that one aspect that is trying to drive forward. And I think that allows you to conserve energy and regroup and battle for a new day and a better outcome. So I appreciate you sharing that, Sarah. And now we're going to go from the really, really hard, nasty days to something a bit magical happened in your life, but really, everything's magical in a certain sense. So I don't know what you can share about this, but I find it funny too, because I think I have 100 domain names at least, and I've had mild success, but not quite the success you have had. Why don't you again share with the audience what you can about a URL sale, a domain name sale? I want to get into that.
Sure. Yeah, it's a great story. And actually, funny enough, it all happened right around one of those times, like you say, where, I don't even know if I had enough money in the bank to, make another month or two. And I was feeling really down about my direction and where, my company was going, and just feeling like I just can't get a break. And funny enough, this all happened right around that time, which I think was good for me to think, well, if all else fails, sometimes, strange things can happen. But, in this particular case, I had come up with a tagline for my company, and it kind of summed up what my company did. And I'm not sure. I don't think I can actually say it legally.
No, you don't have to say it. But the point is, it's a domain name that you had registered, right?
Well, so I came up with a tagline, and I actually trademarked it. And that was probably one of the most important things I did. In addition to registering the domain, I think I bought, the domain for a couple $1,000s. It was available. But then I also registered the trademark.
Uh-huh.
And I had like this idea of, it's going to be a manifesto, and I'm going to make it, this part of, I had like these visions of what I was going to do with it, with my company. But I had it for maybe a year or two and just never got around it, got busy, and hadn't done anything with it. And then one day I get an inquiry from a random, Gmail type of an email address offering me $500 for the domain. And that just seemed, no way. I bought it for way more than that. So I'm not even going to, honor this with a response. So I just completely deleted it and didn't think anything about it. And then, a couple more days went by, and I got another email saying, hey, well, how about, 5,000? And I thought, well, okay. Okay, that's maybe about what I paid for it, but no. And so I just deleted that one too. And, pretty soon then it comes back, and it was, well, how about 30,000?
Wow.
So then I started going, whoa.
Now it's got your attention.
It got my attention. Right. And then I'm thinking about, at this point, like I mentioned, I had a lot of credit card debt, and it was kind of when the housing market was going down, and I'm looking about like my house is underwater right now. And I don't, this 30 grand could really help. And I thought about it. And I actually remember I asked my husband at the time, well, what do you think we should do? And he said, we don't even know what's possible with this thing. So no, like, I think you can make more of it. And that was really great advice that, I had not even scratched the surface of what was possible. And I think my vision for what I thought I could do with it was worth more than 30 grand. And so I decided not to, but again, I just kind of disregarded it. Then I didn't go back and say no. I just kind of ignored it. And then one day, maybe 2 or 3 days later, I'm sitting in my office in meetings, and the phone just starts ringing off. They keep saying, hey, it's that, domain guy again. He keeps calling. And so finally I go get the phone, and he says, well, boy, this game you're playing, this waiting game, sure paying off, because I have authorization to offer you $250,000 for this domain. And so then that just floored me. And I thought, well, this is something. And I said to him, well, how could I think of selling it without knowing, who I'm selling it to? And so I need to get to the bottom of this. I'd like to talk to the CEO of the company. I'd like to hear more about what you're planning on doing with it. And I'd like to hear. And so he said, okay, hold please. And then, a couple minutes later on the phone, in a very thick New York accent comes the kind of the tough guy CEO. And he says, well, listen, young lady, we really, really need to get this domain. What can we... What are you going to give us for this domain? And I said, well, no, you don't understand. And this is where I think I kind of, I put my vision out there. It wasn't necessarily reality. And I said, well, I've got an idea, and I can't let it go. This is my vision. I know exactly what I want. I have a whole business plan around it, and I know exactly what I'm doing. And then he said, well, what is the bottom line? What will you take? Like, what's the number that you need? And I don't know if any of you listeners out there, hopefully you've seen Austin Powers, the movie, but the first thing that popped into my head was, well, I couldn't take it anything less than $1 million. And I threw that number out there, and there was silence on the other end of the line. Uh-huh. And then he said, well, so you're meaning to tell me that for $1 million, you'll sell the domain? And I said, well, yeah, sure. whatever you say, $1 million, sure. And he says, well, my chief marketing officer is in here and my chief legal officer is also in here. We're drawing up the paperwork today. We need to get this done within 24 hours. So you're going to be signing this paperwork tonight. Get your lawyer going on this. And literally within 24 hours, I had signed away the domain and the trademark, and I had $1 million sitting in my bank account. So that was my turn from like a bad month or two to like the best year ever. And I certainly celebrated that. And it was a huge accomplishment and a once in a lifetime thing. I think for me, at least, it was pretty amazing. It was pretty cool.
I get excited every time I hear the story. It is totally magical. It couldn't happen to a better person. And I think it's worth sharing often to inspire people. I mean, that's the kind of thing that actually happened. It happened to you.
It sure did.
And so
I know.
Just because I could probably spend a whole episode on this, but we're going to move on. So you lay down after you sign all the paperwork. What are you thinking? Like, what do you attribute it to? Are you thinking it's because you went, and I'm saying this tongue in cheek, but it's like, is it because you went to church? Is it because,
I mean, it was a great tagline, but I think part of it was not an intentional negotiation strategy, but the waiting and the just acting like I could care less. And really at that moment, I mean, I had nothing to lose. And so I think part of it was in the strategy of really going at it like, I have nothing to lose. I'm not going to let this stress me out. I'm not going to worry about it. If it happens, great. If not, so I didn't get worried. I didn't get wrapped up in the negotiation. It just flowed very seamlessly. I think that was part of it. And the other part I think that was really critical was the fact that I had trademarked it. And so that's a really important lesson for me. And I trademark everything now because had it just been the domain name, they would have just found another domain name. But the fact that I had trademarked it, I had the trademark in the category that they needed it, and I had the domain, and they couldn't go anywhere else.
Beautiful.
So the fact that it was trademarked, I think that's it cost me like $1,000 to trademark it. So I think that a really important lesson for future, for me and for others is if you have something that you love, that you think is special, trademark it and you're using it, because I think that made the difference between, for getting that, having that happen and not having that happen was the trademark for sure.
Wow. So how many, and I understand the trademark's important, but in terms of just domain names, how many do you have registered right now?
Hundreds and hundreds.
Seriously?
And hundreds. Yeah, I do.
Hundreds and hundreds?
Probably 200 maybe, 250.
Okay,
because I trademark it. I mean, I buy everything because I know now. I never know.
Well, and that's why I ask, because I think in a lot of ways it's cheap real estate. And I want the listener to know that, if it's the right name and mark and URL, good things can happen. So you're making me feel good though, because I'm just over 100, and I'm about to invoke the Trump rule, which says for the next one I register, I have to un-auto renew too.
Yeah.
I mean, I just have so many. It's crazy.
Yeah, I try to do that too on it. Like when they come up for renewal, I kind of go, well, was that? I mean, there's those late at night ones you buy. It seems really good after 2 glasses of wine.
That's right.
And then, a year later, you're like, what does that even mean? No thanks. So I let some go for sure too.
That's super funny. I have that same experience. All right, well, we're probably approaching third base here, and we've covered a lot of ground, and I really appreciate you sharing that story. I think it's just such a super fun story. It's got to be fun for you to tell. How do you define success? You're doing so many things. I'm just curious what your definition of success is.
I mean, for me personally, it's being able to do what I love. So it's less about, financial achievement. And, of course I want to be, have enough to, make ends meet. But for me, it's, it's being able to do what I love and work with a team that I love and have a really diverse life that's filled with family time and friends and laughter and travel and, celebration and all those things in between. And in addition to the business achievements. So for me, if I don't have all those things, it's not worth it. And so and I'm willing to work hard and I'm willing to sacrifice, but I want to have all of those other things. So for me, it's about, being able to do what I love and work that I love, and then also find, create a diversity and create some integration of work and life. And that is what I really feel makes me successful, or define success.
Beautiful. And then you knew this was coming. Your 2 or 3 best habits that lead you to be the success that you are.
So I picked one from a business and one from a personal. And the business standpoint, I think one of the most important business habits that I do, the first thing when I get to the office is actually walk around the office and talk to everyone who's there, connect with people, see people's moods, figure out where people are frustrated, ask how I can help, even just spending maybe 5 minutes, 3 to 5 minutes with every person. And, I have a team of 10, so it takes a little bit in the morning, but, going around, one by one and doing that every morning. And I guess it's like, we don't do the stand up, meeting every morning, but it's similar because I can connect with everyone. I can see where potential problems are going to happen. And so for me, making that a habit is really critical from the business standpoint to make sure that everyone is motivated to succeed and to do good work that day. I can kind of gauge where everyone's at.
That's amazing. And I think just my take on it is it's more powerful than a group meeting because it's very personalized. You're digging into connecting with each person one-to-one, just checking in. So that's impressive.
Yeah. And not on business either. I mean, it might be like, oh my gosh, you just got approved for a new house, or a lot of it's personal stuff too, or your grandma's sick or things like that. And so it's a lot of times it's understanding where they are at on a personal level is equally as important as where they're at in a business level.
That's a huge tip. Behind every employee is a person, right? So that's the foundation, and that's what needs to be watered. The roots are there, and then the fruits come from the work. But anyways, beautiful. All right, what else you got?
And then my personal habit that I really try to prioritize is making time for myself. And one of the things that I find, just because I'm busy and I know there are certain things I need to get done at work, is that I like caring for myself or, just doing things for myself tends to fall by the wayside. And so it can be anything from, a quick meditation to a workout to getting a massage to, even just like going and sitting outside in the sun for 15 minutes. But those types of things, I find that when I get grouchy and when I get frustrated, I'm no good to anyone and I'm not as, productive or helpful or happy. And so without that type of self-care, if I don't prioritize and make that a habit, I'm way less productive and I'm way less successful. So for me, it's really prioritizing self-care and time for myself in conjunction with the other business stuff that I do. So I find that's really important.
That is super insightful. And that's also very consistent with a lot of the entrepreneurs I'm fortunate enough to interview. A lot of them say the very same thing. It's they sharpen the saw. Again, it's taking care of themselves so they can take care of business and other people. Beautiful. Yeah. Is there, you do not have to answer this. Is there a not so good habit, a bad habit that you are trying to change?
Yeah. Well, it's kind of the opposite of what I just said, which the not so good habit is after I put my son to bed, I will turn the computer back on and then end up working late into the night. And then it's midnight and I'm tired the next day. And so, the work that I can accomplish or what I do at between 9 and 12, I mean, it's not great work and it doesn't really get me anywhere. And I end up tired and grouchy. And so the not so good habit is just thinking, well, I'm just going to open up the computer and do one more thing. And so doing that instead of prioritizing time for myself or even just relaxing, it's never productive. It's never good. So I was kind of thinking that's my not good habit. I'm trying to not do that as much because I don't ever feel good the next day after doing that. I'm always tired and drained.
I'm just thinking that staying up to midnight with a 3-year-old is a recipe not for success.
No, because he's up at 5:30. So there's
That's
never
what I'm getting at. That's
sleeping
incredible.
in. It's not like, there's a built-in alarm clock of good morning, mommy. It's a beautiful day.
That is so cute.
Yeah.
All right, we're getting very close to home here. How about I know how much you read, and you're welcome to direct us to 1, 2, 3 of your, favorite transformative books.
Okay. Sure. Well, I guess I'll do like an all-time classic for me and then kind of a new one that I've been reading recently that I really like. For me, probably my all-time favorite book is Autobiography of a Yogi. Wow. Which is about the life of Paramahansa Yogananda. And we're lucky to have the self-realization fellowship here in the beautiful gardens. And it's a very cool story about the life of a really, I would say a transformative person. And so, I think it's known to be like one of the favorite books of everyone from like George Harrison to Steve Jobs and, people, I remember a quote from George Harrison saying that he, carries copies of it in his car so that he can just hand it out to people as he feels, the need. And so that one is one of my kind of all-time favorite, really, more kind of a spiritual type of a book. And then the one that I've been reading recently is from a social scientist. Her name is Brené Brown. And I don't know if you guys haven't seen her TED Talks. They're fabulous. They're about courage and vulnerability and shame and worthiness. And so she has like a great TED Talk about vulnerability. And so the book that I'm reading now, which is the number one, I think a New York Times bestseller, is called Rising Strong. And the idea is just, her first books, I think, were about living a brave life and putting yourself out there. And then this book is about, well, if you do that, you are going to fall and you are guaranteed to stumble and you're guaranteed to fall on your face. And so this book is more about getting back up. And so I have really been enjoying it. And I would encourage, this book as well as some of her earlier books, I think are really, really powerful.
Wow. Those are fantastic. And I want to check them both out. You are also extremely productive and you like your technology.
I do.
So I'm wondering if there's one or two either websites, apps, tech tools, gadgets, things you cannot do without.
Wow. Well, I have one that's more like my favorite at the moment. I have lots, like my can't do without is Evernote. And I'm sure a lot of you out there probably use that. And I don't even want to know how many thousands of Evernote notes I have, but I'll do everything from capturing, I'll take photos and archive things. And I use that like I use it for everything. So that's kind of I could not live without Evernote. But my favorite, website at the moment is more in my field, in my industry, which is marketing and social media. And there's a really cool platform that I've been using called Zen Posts. That's Zen Posts. And basically it's an on-demand content platform, but instead of having like writers, like marketers write the content, they have comedians. And so they realize that there's all of these out of work comedians who are doing nothing during the weeks. And so if you, for your brand, need something really funny, I mean, we know how hard it is to come up with funny content for social media and funny videos, and we know how important they are and how they go viral. And so you can actually send, if there's something, you mentioned Trump. So, there's something that happened with him today, then let's come up with something funny that we can joke about. And so within an hour, you can put what you want, and you can get back a really funny, witty social media post or a video that's created by actual comedians who are out of work.
That's amazing. Is it? And so they'll produce fake news for us, or is it just super funny?
No, it's not fake news. It's just funny, real news. But yes, funny. That was the humorous, Martin.
No, I was just going to say that a lot of the fake news is very funny.
Yes. True.
Fake news.
I think they'll do whatever funny stuff. I heard also that they are like now have poets and, more heartwarming things they're moving into. So I think you can kind of get a lot of different types of styles of stuff, but I think, it will be interesting whether you do it for yourself personally to come up with really cool things to put out there, or for clients or for your company. I think I've been enjoying it, and I think it's kind of a favorite tool for me to get some good content quickly, which is always important.
Well, thank you for sharing. I think we all know comedy is just where it's at, right? Everybody wants to turn off their brain, at least for some period of time during the day, and hopefully laugh. My question is, the name sounds incongruous to their mission. Zen Post doesn't sound like hilarity to me. So
yeah, well, they said that it's around how frustrating it can be to feel like you have to come up with good content, and it's so stressful. And so the moment when you realize you have great content is a moment of Zen. So it's the happiness that you feel when you feel relieved that you have great content that's out there.
Either that, or they were just stuck with a domain name and had to make it work.
Well, yeah.
That sounds like a great resource. I can't wait to check that out.
Yeah, it's a good one.
All right. Well, this has been absolutely enlightening, educational, informative. And before we totally button this thing up, Sarah, is there anything you have, like, project-wise, or something you want to promote and share, direct people to?
Sure. Well, I thought one thing that might be helpful, certainly you can visit our website, which is zenz.com. But you had mentioned, Martin, the importance of uncovering your personal values.
Yep.
And so we actually have a 14-question survey where people can go on there, take these 14 questions, and you can find out what your personal values are. And you can learn about what that means and how that impacts your behavior. And you can see, in percentages, this percentage this and this percentage that. So that website is surveys.socialvalues.com, and I can send you that too. But that's where you can actually go to take the social values survey and find out your personal values. So that might be a fun thing for anyone who's listening.
That would be not just fun, but extremely valuable. Because my experience tells me most people do not take the time to do a couple things: define success, what it means for them, and define their own values. And then, of course, order them in some sort of hierarchy. So, Wow, Sarah, that has been terrific. Really enjoyed it. So great to connect/reconnect. And I just can't thank you enough. I know this is going to provide tremendous value for the listeners. So with that, we will say goodbye. And unless you have any final parting shot.
That's wonderful. Thank you so much for having me on. I appreciate it.
You were amazing. You killed it. All right, Sarah, we'll talk later. Bye.
Okay. Bye.
We'll see you at the next episode.